It's December. Festivities and Christmas lights fill the streets, with laughter echoing from the windows. Despite the sense of joy, deep in the alleyways and offices of bright minds, the fight for survival continues. Today, we will explore the lives of these men and women while hunting for answers to their daily drive to success and survival. This is Creating Inspiration. Vivek Mahbubani is an MC, musician, programmer turned stand-up comedian in Hong Kong with an avid interest for DC characters. He performs bilingually in English and Cantonese. He's well known for getting inspiration from daily scenes in the city, as well as his personal experience as both an insider and an outsider. It's time to explore what it's like to be a comedian in the city of finance.
Hey! What's up? Come on in.
Thanks.
Hey! Well, this is it. This is the home. This is the space. This is the Hong Kong minimalism.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, just trying to put everything in its own place so I can find this table and find the floor as well.
That's good enough.
It's good enough. Yeah. Come on, you want water or anything?
Yeah, sure.
Cool. Let me get you some water.
Right.
All right.
Yeah. So, Vivek.
Yes.
Right? How are you today? How was Christmas?
Christmas was very good. Luckily, because it's really rare that I'm usually busy until the middle of December. Okay. And then after that, things just slow down and I finally get a little breather to catch up, like, where did the year go? What's happening?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I did all my gigs, and then kind of in the middle of December, things slow down, and Christmas, for those few days, usually there are no gigs anyway. Okay. So I get to enjoy a few days of that.
That's nice. Yeah, That's really important sometimes to slow down.
Exactly.
So how would you describe yourself in 3 words?
So if I had to pick 3 words, I would say fun, hyper, and productive.
Okay.
So these are my 3 words.
Very good combination.
I live by that. So like one of my things about my work is I want people to feel that when you work with me, no matter what it is, whether it's comedy, emceeing, if I'm a ring announcer or whatever, you will have fun. And secondly, anybody who knows that I'm always like, I'm always like, let's go, we're gonna do it. And whether I'm walking, I'm always either running late or trying to be in. Whether I'm working, I'm like, okay, I can do this and this and this and this, and my brain's always bouncing around. And lastly is that I like to be very productive because I really feel I can do so much more than just, okay, this is a joke and that's all I will do with it. So what more can I do with this item? So same with my work, same with my time. Instead of just being a comedian, can I be a comedian who goes to schools and shares my story with kids? Can I be a comedian that can maybe inspire people to think about their lives, how it's fun? So more productive than simply a joke is a joke and that's the end of it.
Do you have any productivity tips then?
Oh, tons. I'm a big productivity junkie.
Okay.
So number 1 is that never try to remember. In other words, when you have a task to do, don't be like, okay, I got to remember to do this. When you do that, you're wasting time to remember. What you do is write it down, put it aside, finish your work, and then come back to this. Oh, let me do that now. Okay. So you're not wasting time trying to remember what to do. You're just busy doing it.
That's smart. So like, I bet the to-do lists are a big part of it.
It's been my big part. It's been my curse as well. It never ends. Every day I'm like, oh, you're still here. This list never ends. Yeah. So, it's definitely been a long time. More than a decade of to-do lists for me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's actually quite impressive because I sometimes struggle with that. Like I make a to-do list and I not complete anything.
I get it. Yeah. I mean, for me, my biggest challenge is that my to-do list basically has a list of stuff that I can never get to because I'm so busy doing the top things, the bottom never comes. But at least I know that it's there. Should the day come that I get to it, it's still there. I won't have forgotten it. So at least I feel better about that.
That's good.
Yeah.
That sounds like a good tip.
Yeah. Let's sit down. Let's get comfortable.
Hi.
Hey, again.
Yeah, hey again. Okay, so you're a comedian. So what's the most appealing thing about that? Why comedy?
I grew up watching stand-up comedy. I absolutely loved it, right? So the thing is, I used to watch on TV this show called Seinfeld, and this performer called Jerry Seinfeld, in between scenes, would have him just go, hey, so why are we doing this? And I thought, what is this? This is just talking. I talk. I just need a mic and I can do this, right? And I love the idea of stand-up comedy, just talking about life. Secondly, I started watching comedy on the internet with YouTube and everything, and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Chris Rock, he's just talking about life. I like this. And I like the concept of just talking about life.
Just sharing.
Just sharing, yeah, exactly. And it was simple enough where it's like, I don't have to learn acting, I don't have to play music. And I said, okay, let's do it. Yeah, right? It's simple, it's basic. And then I told myself one day I want to try it, just to try it, see whatever happens, right? I gave it a shot in 2007, tried it out, I loved it. I'm like, this is so cool, whoa, right? I wasn't great, but I'm like, I'm enjoying this. And as a hobby, I kept doing it. But I'm the type of guy that if I'm going to put time into something, I'm not going to just muck around and whatever happens, happens. I'm going to put in some effort. And over years, as you put an effort into something, you have to improve to a certain extent, right? And as you get better, people notice you. They might say, hey, you're pretty funny, come to my party. Okay. And then it just grew from there. But comedy in its essence was, as I tell people, it's my way of dealing with life. The truth is, it's my way of accepting how the world is, rather than fighting it, trying to twist it around to make it fun for me. So I remember when I was in school, people used to sometimes make fun of my body hair. And one example was, I remember I kind of twisted it around. I told my friends, you know how good hair is? In summer, I don't get mosquito bites. Yeah, they fly and get stuck in my hair, right? And that moment changed things, where I thought, wait, you mean they're gonna stop making fun of me if I make fun of myself? Whoa, this is great. And I like that concept of using humor to deal with my issues. And I do that all the time with my life, where comedy is kind of like my therapy, where I can just, well, life is that way, but let's make a joke about it. It's so silly. And one of my things I recently thought about was the idea that I used to get annoyed, like, so unfair. How come the elderly get a $2 octopus card discount when they take the bus, where I pay full price? I'm like, that's a big jump. Like I'm paying $10, you're paying $2. That's a big jump, man. That's a lot, right? If it was half price, I get it, but like that's a big jump. To the point, like even my parents, they both get the benefits. So for them, it's just $2 anywhere. I'm like, that's not right. When you go across the harbor, it should be more expensive, right? And those kinds of things would annoy me. Where I'm like, that's not fair. What about me? And then I would think of it like from a humor point of view. It was like, oh yeah, you're right, because when they use their octopus card and they tap it on the machine, it goes doot, and mine goes dude. And I'm like, yeah, see, even their octopus is happier, right? So you get my point? So that's my way of dealing with them. Otherwise, I'd be like, so unfair, life's like that, I work so hard, right? But I'm like, hey, you know what? That's quite funny. Thanks to that, I can make a joke out of it.
Yeah, that's a really good way of dealing with life, because I think many people get angry about what's going on in the world, It's a pretty depressing place sometimes.
It can be, yeah, absolutely.
Your way is much more
it helps me cope.
Friendly.
Yeah, it helps, like I say, it helps me cope better with a thing I don't like already. Yeah.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So you've been doing comedy for some time.
Yes.
If you weren't a comedian, what would you be?
So before comedy, I was a web designer / developer, and I found what I do like is the concept of I can create something in my own room and put it on the internet and the whole world sees. How I found this was like way back when we used to have the internet just started and we had modems and everything, right? And I remember the idea of like, so you're telling me I can put this thing over here and the whole world sees this, and that was called a website. And I was like, that is fascinating. Like, this is crazy. So I learned how to do HTML code and everything like that. Made my first website, was terrible, but still, the world can see this now. How many visitors? 27, whoa, right? So the idea really was I wanted to do something creative where I could simply just create it and then just spread it out into the world. So I believe before comedy, I was a web designer developer because of that. But I believe had I not become a comedian, I probably would have been maybe a YouTuber or something, or I'm sure something where I created out of nothing and put it on this platform and for everyone to enjoy. So it'll be some concept like that.
Yeah, that's really cool. So these creative careers, I think it fits you.
Yeah, for sure.
You would do really well as a YouTuber as well.
Exactly. I mean, like, I think the one thing about me is that I don't like the same mundane stuff every day. So for example, it's not going to an office full-time job that I don't like. It's the idea that I'm there again. I'm like, why am I here again? This is the same day. Exactly. Yeah. And you know it. You're like, I just cannot be in the same routine. I love routines. Like, don't get me wrong. My to-do list is full of routines. On my to-do list, I have brushed teeth as well. It's there. Yeah. I'm very detailed. I'm like, did I do that? Because some days your mind's everywhere, and you're like, wait, did I even brush? So I have it there, just like done. So I love routines. I am a very disciplined disciplined, systematic guy. But I cannot have it where it's the same old, like the whole day's work over here till 5 p.m. Go there, we have a meeting. I'm like, oh my God, this is the same stuff. I'm very bored now. Yeah, so that's my issue. I love routine, but I can't have it over and over again.
Yeah, but that's a good point, actually. I struggle with that as well in my work. But
I mean, the good thing is you notice it. Some people don't notice it, like that's life. It's like, well, I mean, no, not really, but
it doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be, if you're willing to do the other work, that's the challenge.
That's really inspiring. Okay, so you also said that you go to schools to like do comedy and talk with students. Is there anything you've learned from students, or anything you hope for them to learn from you?
First of all, what I've learned is that they're exactly the same like I was when I was their age. Right? Every school I've been to, initially the students come into the hall, they're like, all right, what are you going to teach me now? What should I not do? What am I doing wrong? Tell me how to be a better person. Oh, let's go, right? And you get that, and I get it. When I was in school as well, I'm like, okay, I don't do drugs, I get it, right? You go in there with that, like, oh God, here we go again. And that or in itself, I'm like, okay, so I guess we're all the same. Like even in 20 years time, a 15-year-old boy is gonna do the same, oh God, right? So that's not gonna change.
That's true.
Right? However, the good thing is that they're more open to this idea of schools having performers or bringing this kind of art form for students. The reason is because they've found in schools, at least, they have a new appreciation for comedy. Before they'd be like, oh, just tell jokes. Why would you come to my school and tell them jokes, right? What's the point of that?
School is not fun.
Yeah, it's not supposed to be fun. And why should they laugh? What did they do, right? But now they're realizing, wait a second, give the kids an hour of comedy. They have a good time. They feel better, right? And then hear the stories. And also with my comedy in schools, what I really do is I'm not just like, well, the other day, blah. I'm not just doing just comedy. I'm also breaking down my comedy to show them, see, actually the truth is that wasn't a happy thing. What I did do is kind of twist it around. So the truth is you have that as well, but why did you do it? So one of my classic examples, which is also on my Instagram, is this video about happiness in Hong Kong. So what I talk about is that happiness in Hong Kong, or in Asia basically, is when you're alone in a lift and you see somebody running towards a lift, right? And you press that door close button. As the doors are closing, you're like, yes, right? So the truth is all of us do that. We all do that, right? Especially if you live in Hong Kong long enough, you're like, hi, right? And when I tell the students that, they're all laughing. And I very often tell that joke, and I take a step back. I said, who over here has never taken a lift? Everyone's taken the lift. Who has never pressed the door close button? Everyone's done it. So what did I do? I didn't tell you something you don't know. Why did you laugh? It's not surprising. You know this. But it's the way you do it, right? And I showed them, you see, it's because I looked at the lift, not as it's a lift, whatever, right? I'm like, why do I like this? Why is it satisfying? Why is it when my friend runs it's even better, right? Why do I like seeing you kind of right? So I talk about that. If you look at it as a politeness thing, it's terrible. We're very rude. Oh, it's so rude, right? And when I go to certain places and I tell people that, they're like, you people are so rude. That's your friend. I'm like, that's why it's even better. If it's a stranger, I wouldn't do that. But it's my friend, like, oh, there's no way.
It's part of the fun.
It's part of the fun, right? So in the same way, on the other hand, you might have people in the office making fun of each other, right? And you might say, that's rude. But the truth is, a lot of studies have shown that when people can make fun of each other, they've just gotten closer. Right? When you're really good friends, you don't really mind. You're like, I know he's just kidding. It's okay. Right? With strangers,
using each other.
Exactly, right? Yeah, exactly. So those kinds of things, I think, so in schools, I try to talk to kids about that, where there's so many angles on the same thing. So you can choose about life being a tragedy and, oh my God, it's so difficult, or kind of turn around and be like, I dealt with that. This is my life. This is weird, right? And I tell them, I said, look, I went through the same stuff as you. You know, I did not know my future. I did not know where I was going. I was scared. I didn't know how to move forward, but that's the whole game. You look at it every day and be like, oh, look at what I did. I'm an idiot. I did that. Really? You know, like I can look back at photos of me when, you know, wearing certain clothes. I'm like, I wore that, right? Same thing. But you know, that's the whole point. As you look back and just laugh.
Yeah, I think that's a very important lesson, especially for students who tend to be, you know, stressed and like they get freaked out about everything.
Yes, yeah.
Oh my God, my girlfriend broke up with me, or my
it's the biggest thing,
something.
Exactly,
in the classroom, and that's a very important lesson.
Yeah, for them, it's perspective, really. I mean, like, I don't blame them. When I was their age, if let's say I failed my test, my life is over. No, it's not. Okay, it's just a test. Relax, all right.
Yeah, I think that awareness of different perspectives is also something they cannot learn at school.
Exactly.
At least like local.
From a textbook. Yeah. Oh, for sure. There's no. They're like perspective. Get your work done. Yeah.
No, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There's only one way of.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. That's the challenge, really.
Okay, so you went to a local school, right? And like you studied in Hong Kong your whole life, basically. So how does your bilingual and bicultural identity kind of helped you to connect with the audience and in general with people in Hong Kong?
So having studied in a local school and not being Chinese myself, it gave me two perspectives to grow up with. So I can go out of this door and be the foreigner, or I can be the local. Because I speak Cantonese as well, so I pretty much got the same thing that everybody has as well. Now, I get to see two worlds where I'm like, huh, interesting. So when people see me, they assume I'm a foreigner, and therefore they do this. So there's the running joke that I used to have as well, is that, you know, in Hong Kong, you want to get away with anything, just speak in English. You can do whatever you want. And they're like, oh, English, never mind, you know, right? Yeah. And I can get away with that. So on one hand, it's very unfair. It's like, how come I can do it and, you know, I can get away with it, whereas someone else does it, maybe not work. At the same time, if I speak one sentence of Cantonese, everyone's like, wah, wah, right? Whereas a Chinese person speaks one sentence of English and they're like, so?
They're supposed to be fluent.
Yeah, you're trying to show off. What's the big deal, right? So it's reverse, where I'm like, see, that's reverse racism. You are racist against yourself because you feel you're Chinese. What's the big deal? But you're not Chinese. Ooh, right? But I went to the same school, so if anything, it should be the same, right? Mm-hmm. So those are small things I find is that I have that identity benefit and issue where I don't fit in either way. Mm-hmm. So either I can fight and be like, oh, nobody accepts me, I'm never gonna fit in, or be like, wow, I stood out. I'm outstanding. Yeah. So that's one thing I also talk about in schools is where I say, look, if you try to fit in all the time, the problem is you will never be outstanding. Now people tell you, oh, you should be outstanding. Well, there you go. I'm outstanding without trying. The same way, what makes you outstanding? So for me, I think that's my biggest benefit. And in my comedy world, that's what I get to enjoy. I get to tell people what life is like as a local, but a foreigner at the same time. And they're like, you're right. I never thought of it that way. The number of times, yeah, exactly. The number of times I've made the point of when I speak Cantonese, people are like, wah! When a Chinese person speaks English, they're like, so? Like, you see? Like, I get the benefit, you don't. So who's the racist, who's the minority, who's the weaker one right now? So there's so many things to play. But yeah, but definitely, and there's more and more of that. Third culture kids are more and more common now. Yeah. There's tons of that happening now. So I just got the chance to tell it on stage.
And I think that's also an important lesson to kind of, for the local students to also see that, because I think they might not even realize.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not something you hear about very often, right?
Yeah, I mean, think of it this way, like, because for a student, their world is whatever they see, right?
Yeah, like the textbook and
the textbook, yeah, and whatever their parents take them to. So if something new comes to them and meet them in person, it makes a big impact. For example, I've gone to many schools, and halfway through my talk, I always take a moment and say, all right, right now, I want you all to think in your head, are you watching an Indian guy on stage, or are you just watching a guy on stage? Right? And they've forgotten my identity. I'm like, you see, within 30 minutes, race is no longer an issue. Yeah. Because now we're just connecting. And that's all it took. You did not need to do respect the culture, learn about the heritage. You just sat there listening and that was it. We solved the problem. It's as simple as that. So we often overcomplicate things. And like you said, same thing. It allows people to think of it like, you're right, never thought of it that way. Humor is that. It's just a new angle on life. Just basically saying something basic is actually quite fun. Something tragedy is actually quite funny. So it's how you want to play it, really.
What advice would you give to people who, you know, feel lost? Maybe they don't really know where they belong or where they are going.
Yeah.
What would you recommend them to do?
I mean, the first thing is when you feel lost and you don't know where you're going is to accept yourself first. Now, it's not as simple as just looking in the mirror like, you and me, I accept you, right? I wish I could do that. But it's to think back, who am I? You know, what do I like? And be okay with it. So, for example, growing up, I was a big heavy metal fan. And very often I would be confused because like everyone looking at me like, what's this music? This is noise. Like, is it really noise? Why do I like noise? This is weird. And you doubt yourself. As a young kid, you want acceptance. It's fair, right? You don't know who you are anyway. But over time, you would listen a bit more and you realize, oh, you like it too? Wait, you like it too? So it's not just me? Huh, interesting. You meet people who like the same stuff and you ask yourself, do I want to be like these people? Number one, that. So you think about what you like, right? And then try to see who else does like it and, you know, is that who I am? Thirdly is also to take a lot of moments to reflect. Is it okay to like this stuff? So for example, everyone likes to be lazy. I mean, yeah. But when you see someone else is lazy, they're doing nothing. You're like, is that what I want in my life? Yeah, I want to be just just sitting around doing nothing. Okay, but in 20 years time, is that what you want, right? So you have to think like that and be honest. And lastly, I think it's really just being okay with it. In other words, I always say that I am not perfect, nor am I trying to be perfect. No, sorry, I am trying to be perfect, but I know I will never be perfect, right? Yeah. However, I accept things like my interests. For example, I like really gory, gruesome comic books, right? I'm a big fan. I grew up reading Spawn comics, which is just like, oh my God, about death and everything. I love it. I grew up reading Stephen King books, all about the horror. I love this stuff. I'm like, I love how the intestines, but monsters. Yes, just monsters. I'm like, this is so cool, right? But I read that, I listen to that music, doesn't mean I'm going to come out like, okay, now I'm going to, So I think that's the first thing, is that once you're okay with yourself, but it takes time. But it's not a matter of just like, be okay, but it's like, why am I okay with it? What is wrong with this? Is it really wrong to listen to heavy metal music? No. Doesn't make me a bad person. Sure, the lyrics are talking about this and that, but so does that movie talk about killing someone. So you went to watch the movie, are you a bad person, right? So did, for example, like, oh, you didn't donate money to that charity, you're a bad person. Really? I didn't even go there. Right? So there's so much you can talk about. So I think, the first thing is accept yourself. Then once you're okay with yourself, then you can see how people want to look at you and adjust accordingly. The first step is like, accept yourself. That's like the key philosophy of life. Know thyself, same thing. Accept yourself.
So kind of like the process of, let's say, awareness.
Yes.
Right? So you need to know who you are and what you like.
Yeah.
And kind of you go from there. How it works out and how and what doesn't work out.
Correct. And I tell people this, is that I know myself enough where, let's say someone tells me, oh, you did this, and I'm like, it's so unlike me. I would never do it this way. Really? I did this? No way. I doubt myself. I'm like, this, I did it? No way. It's just so unlike me. So for example, let's say I'm a big fanatic of having really organized password management. In other words, no two accounts has the same password. So I have to have some way to keep track of everything, right? And then when people are like, oh, do you know your password for this? And I'm checking myself, I don't even have the password. They're like, no, you must have it. I said, it's unlike me to not have it stored in this place. So if I don't have it, means I don't have it. And they're like, no, but you logged in. I'm like, there's no way. You get it? So that kind of thing.
It's kind of like self-confidence as well.
Exactly,
like, you are aware of what you're good at, what you're not good at, perhaps,
or what you like, what you don't like, and you're okay with it. Like, I know, like, for example, I do not like washing the dishes, right? I just don't like it. Sure, I should, right? But I don't like it. So to the point, I used to have this joke before where I was like, okay, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna recycle paper every day, become paperless, but only for my dishes I'll use paper plates. That's the only thing in my life. I was like, that way I compensate it. While you're printing your notes, I'll type it up instead on my computer. So I say paper there, but I use paper here. Like, those are my kind of things to understand, because I really hate it. I was like, what am I doing washing dishes? Like, what is it?
Waste of time.
Yeah, I'm like, I gotta wash it again tomorrow. That's pointless then. Why wash today? So that's my thinking as well. So once you know yourself enough that you're confident that this is who I am. I don't need you to tell me who I am. I know who I am.
But that's a process as well, especially for younger students.
Absolutely,
right? Definitely
it takes time. I mean, I'm 41. That's, it's only the last few years I was like, I know who I am. It took me that time. When I was a 20-year-old kid, I knew kind of who I was, but I wasn't sure. But now you get to a point, you're like, I've done this enough that I'm pretty sure I know who I am now. I'm not like, am I really this person? No, I am this person. Like, I no longer worry when I tell people I love heavy metal. I'm not like, oh, but what if they think, if I'm like, that's who I am. You don't like it, your problem. So that's kind of the reverse.
So do you think there is a timeline to like discover yourself, or stuff like that, or do you think everyone has their own pace and there's no timeline in life?
Well, let's put it this way. Timeline is very unfair, because if I put 5 minutes of practice a day and it took me 3 years, and you put 5 hours of practice a day, it shouldn't take you 3 years.
True.
So usually, like, there's this thing Malcolm Gladwell once said, to become a master, you have to spend 10,000 hours of practice. When you do 10,000 hours of input, then you're at a master level. Now, if you put 10 hours a day, that's just like, not that long if you put 10 hours a day. But are you putting 10 full hours a day? No. So you can't compare like that, right? So I'll put it this way. I would say if every day you spend 1 hour on your own to really like take a moment and reflect, whether it's writing a journal or just taking moments to ask yourself questions or reading books to make yourself reflect, then maybe in like 3 years time you'll be like, I've read the books and they're all saying the same thing. I get it. You start noticing the same stuff. It's like the patterns. Yeah, exactly. Every book is going to be like, you should do this. That's what they said, but different words, and then you figure it out. I would say an hour a day in 3 years time, I'm very confident you'll be pretty sure who you are. But I don't mean just an hour of like, I read a book, okay, but like you have to do the work. So for example, there's a book called Think Like Da Vinci, which I'm a big fan of Leonardo da Vinci, and that book required you to do an exercise where you write 100 questions on your own to yourself.
Oh wow.
Yeah, you create 100 questions, okay? And then every day I would answer 3 of those 100 questions. So within a month's time, I've answered like 90 questions. Okay. Right? But every day you look at your questions. So first of all, to think of the questions requires you to like really reflect. And then to answer it, you got to really go dig deep and like, okay, you know. So you would ask things like, what do I like eating? What's my favorite drink? Da, da, da. And then to the point like, why do I get angry when people do that? Why do I feel disappointed when they do that to me? And you go like, why do I get angry? For example, I know that I get very angry when I see, I get very annoyed when I see someone working with me, but they're not contributing the 100% effort.
Okay.
I don't require them to be at my level, but I require them to be at their max level for themselves. And I will know, you know, like I really hate seeing when I go to an event and I see the wires just like all over the floor. I'm like, no, that's got to be on the wall. You know, am I OCD? Not really. My room's a mess, so it's not that, you know. So these kinds of things, and I'm like, oh, interesting. So I like a certain level of quality when I'm doing my job professionally. You know, but I'm not really OCD where when I go home I'm like, oh, I got to put this properly, otherwise, you know, I'm not there. So I know that better, yeah.
Well, that's so also with the questions, right? So I think there are some certain layers of knowing yourself as well, and maybe with age we just get to the deeper layers.
Correct. Yeah. So that's another thing is like with age, with everything, you see the world differently. So when you were like a teenager, the world's just like, I'm gonna do all this stuff, right? Ask every teenager, oh, you ever think about getting married and having children? Never. God, why would I do that, right?
Disgusting.
Oh God, right? Same thing. But then you change when you're 20, when you're 30, you start thinking like, okay, I've done all that excitement. Oh, I'm gonna go out for a drink, and after like I've done that, like, and then so I don't want to come home every day with another adventure. I want to come home and be like, okay, this is home, right? So at some point you want to have a home that's yours. You want to have a, you know, start your own little legacy. Those things change over time because it's much like the comedian. I've done, for example, I've traveled and done cruise ships and stuff like that. I've done gigs on those. It was pretty cool, right? But right now I've done enough cruise ship gigs where I'm like, okay, I've done it. I get it. Like if you told me I could never do it again, I'm like, okay, so I mean, I'm not like, oh, yeah, no big deal. I've done it. I've experienced it. I enjoyed it, and that was that. But reverse it. Like I'm not gonna say no to other stuff, you know. So that's the idea. I would say like over time, yeah, things will change, but you have to reflect. That's the biggest challenge, to know that you're evolving.
Yeah, I think that's also the difficult part, but I think the most important part.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so you talked a lot about like comedy and how it started.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there were some difficult moments as well, and some challenging paths and opportunities that were maybe pretty bad as well. So could you tell me more about that?
So obviously with any sort of art form, there's no correct way, there's no perfect way. Everyone's going to tell you this is the right way, and you will think, I guess that's the right way. No, but that's the right way. Oh, okay, I guess that's the right way. And over time you realize, wait a second, there is no right way. There's only your way. Now, not everybody will agree with your way, but that's your way. So I always use an example. If I wanted to be a famous musician and travel around the world doing big arenas and everything, being a heavy metal musician is not your ideal way. Not to say you can't. If I'm Metallica, great, right? But the chances are much lower. If I went pop, more mainstream, more people like it, so highly likely that more people will follow me, right? So now I have to ask myself, do I want to be that famous rock star, or do I want to be the musician that I like the music? In the same way as a comedian, do I want to be the comedian that just makes people laugh? Or do I want to be telling them my comedy? So I could have been that typical mainstream comedian like, oh, Indian people talk like this. You can do that, right? I mean, people will laugh. It's the basic mainstream thing. However, because it's so basic, if I had a show tonight with, let's say, 5 other comedians and all 5 of them were Indian, highly likely one of them would already been like, Indian people, right? And then when it comes to me, I'm like, oh, that's my joke. Because there was nothing new about it, right? I went the general, generic, easy way. However, if I went the harder way, which is more unique, then I'm going to put so much more effort. Right? Now the audience might think, well, he's funny and he's funny. I laugh just as much. But my level was much more, let's say, effortful, where I really worked hard trying to find a craft joke, make it unique for myself. Whereas the audience is like, no, they were both funny.
Yeah.
Right? So that's my challenge, is that I've got to ask myself, okay, so if number one is that what type of comedian do I want to be? I could be the easygoing comedian, just write a few jokes, ha ha ha, we go home. But for me, I was like, no, but I want to be the comedian that I would enjoy, that I will find funny, right? So then I had to accept that. That's the first challenge. Obviously, in the beginning, you want to be Picasso, right? You do a Picasso, and everyone's like, no, this is rubbish, right? So you have that, but you learn. You ask people, you reflect, and the thing for me is that in the beginning, you thought all these comedians, they know their stuff, right? Oh, what's the right way? You should do it that way. Okay, I'm gonna do it that way. And over time, you're like, maybe not actually, you know? Like that may not be the best way. I thought you knew it, but you only knew this much.
Yeah.
But I also only know this much. Right, so
it's kind of like realizing your own identity.
Correct. Yeah.
Process, right?
Exactly. Yeah. With any art form, like if you went to learn from, let's say, Pablo Picasso, he will teach you a certain way, but that's not the only way, right? So Bruce Lee, again, I used to read a lot of his books on philosophy, and he said there is no one way. You know, he would have the argument with all these different disciplines of martial arts. They say this is the only way. Do not mix with the others. And he said, no. Why can't I take a bit of this, and bit of this, right? And he made his own Tae Kwon Do. He made his own kind of thing where I'm going to take the best of everything and create the ultimate, right? And he created something new. And I think that's one thing that inspired me to go, I learned a bit from you, okay, and now make my own. You may not agree with me because I'm doing something you say that's not right, but I think it's good. So for example, in Hong Kong comedy, some people would tell you, oh, you should not laugh on stage while you're performing, right? But then I watched this comedian called Wally Collins, and he would perform night after night. And every night he would laugh at the same joke. Clearly it was a kind of a fake laugh, but he made it so really like, he's laughing at his own joke. That's how into it he is. And I was like, that's so good. Where you're like, let me tell you. Oh man, I went out, right? And you do that, and the audience is like, this guy's having a good time. I thought that is awesome. So when you are laughing along with your joke, the audience thinks you're really into it.
Yeah.
Said,
that's actually also like makes them feel good.
Yeah.
If the comedian is all serious, then it kind of misses the point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you have that, you know. So I was like, wait, so maybe laughing is not so bad. Maybe I can laugh a bit. I'm not going like, ha ha ha, but I'm just like, oh man, doing that, right? I've told the joke 100 times. I'm not angry about it, but I'm still like, oh, those people, I'm gonna get them. Yeah. And the audience feels it. So so it turns out you can laugh a bit. So over time you do that. Now, then I learned number one is just take what you want, make your own version. That's step number one. Number two is you're going to trial and error. So one of my classic things I remember is that I've done gigs before where basically they booked me for a show, right? And they told me the party starts at 6 p.m. I said, okay. I got there at 6 p.m. I'm like, hi, I'm the comedian. Where do I perform? And they said, oh, no. The party starts at 6. You perform at 9. I was like, oh, okay. Now, of course, you have to pretend. They're like, oh, yeah, I know. I like coming early. Sit there for 3 hours and just, So I was sitting there watching people having fun, and I'm just watching them all drinking. They're like drinking. I was like, nobody's eating. They're only drinking alcohol. I was like, okay, this is not good. And you can see over time, 6 p.m., hey, Tom, 7 p.m., hey, 8 p.m., hey. By 9 p.m., everyone's like,
They can barely comprehend.
They go inside the dining hall to eat their food. The MC is also drunk. All right, guys, we have this funny guy. And the MC gets, hey, come here, funny guy here. Right, give me the mic, I start performing. Now everyone's busy eating. They're like, oh, I'm so hungry, I want to eat. They don't pay attention to me. So I'm on stage doing my 20 minutes, nobody cares. And I'm just like, oh man, this is tough. And I remember they're eating steak, I'm like, of course, it's steak. I mean, what do you want, right? So I remember at 17 minutes, the speaker started ringing, the echo feedback, wing, like that. And I'm like, oh, it's just, and I kept trying to move around to avoid that. And someone in the audience finally stood up and said, maybe that's a sign to get off the stage.
Oh my God.
Yeah, right? And I looked at my watch, I'm like, 17 minutes. They hired me for 20 minutes. I'm going to do 20 minutes. So they have no excuse not to pay me. So I did all that stuff, finished my 20 minutes, nobody cared. I looked around, where's the MC? He's not anywhere. I put the mic on the floor and I just left like that. And I remember going back thinking like, what just happened? Like I went there on time, I was professional, I did my job, and I completely failed, right? And it makes you realize, wait, it wasn't really my fault. I mean, anyone would have failed over there. So it wasn't me not being funny, but it was just circumstances. Okay, all right, fine. So you learn from that as well. And I was reading other books about this other comedian saying you are allowed to whine about your bad gig until 11 a.m. tomorrow, right? So I was like, oh, very good point, you know? So you can whine all night, go to sleep, wake up, but 11 a.m., all right, man, let's get on with our lives. And I was like,
it's in the past.
It's in the past. What am I going to do now, right? And you're like, okay. And I learned you should allow yourself to vent, get it out of your system, and then get back on with everything.
Yeah.
Not to say, well, that's life, be positive. No, get angry, these idiots, right?
Yeah.
And then those things made me realize, yeah, you're going to have bad gigs. And no matter how good you are, you will have a bad gig. But guess what? That gig happened like 10 years ago, and I'm still here. Yeah. So if a bad gig happens to me today, I'll probably still be here after 10 years. So who cares?
Yeah, so it's like not like defining factor of your career, right?
Correct, yeah.
Even if you fail once or twice, well, it happens.
Exactly, it happens. And if anything, it became a funny story. I do that story in my shows now, so there you go.
Yeah, so it was actually a part of inspiration.
Correct, yeah.
Failure.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, that's also a very inspiring thing to say, right?
Yeah.
You can actually not just learn from failure, but you can actually get inspired from failure.
You can take it
slightly different.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing I say when I say productive is like, it's so bad, I'm going to make something value out of it. Yeah.
Okay, so you've been doing comedy for a long time now. What do you think is the future of comedy? Not just in Hong Kong, just in general.
I think the art form of comedy, first of all, has a newfound respect by everybody, where it's no longer just tell me a funny joke, make me laugh, I want to go home. But they're realizing that comedy is a mindset. Much like saying if you are a dancer, you see the world in movement. If you're a painter, you see the world in shapes. A comedian sees the world in funny angles. So I tell people that the future of comedy is more and more companies, more and more people are realizing they can apply this elsewhere. There are so many companies now that hire, at least for me, hire me to go there and talk about my art form and explain to their staff from a well-being point of view, from a salesperson point of view, from a presentation point of view. And so the future of comedy is so much more, because at the end of the day, it's just storytelling. And storytelling ultimately is the basic human entertainment. Think about when you were a kid, right? And your parents tell you stories before you sleep. That's essential, and we want stories. We love stories. Think about when you're an old person, you tell stories. That's the whole point. Look at all the products and advertisements now. It's no longer like, I love this product, get it. Nobody cares. They want to see the person use it and like, oh wow, this product changed my way. They want to see the context, and they want to hear the story behind it. Otherwise, why influencer? I like your story of your life, and you use this product, oh, I want that. So you have all that put together. So I think the future of comedy is getting bigger and bigger for everybody. At the same time, the comedy in Asia is exploding. Before it used to be more Western, but also Western was still, that area, that kind of life. But now,
niche.
Yeah, it's kind of niche. But in Asia, because we have so much different culture, crossing, mixing, and everything, that it's another level. It's basically taking comedy on steroids, and it's just like, oh my goodness. You go to Malaysia, it's like you got the Indian, the Chinese, this and that, and we know each other enough that we can make fun of each other. This is the best. I mean, so the idea really is that comedy, I believe in the next 10 years, will hopefully be as commonplace as, let's say, karaoke.
Okay.
Like when people say, karaoke, yeah, what about it? Going to the movie, sure.
Yeah, let's go for it, sure.
Exactly, yeah. So my goal really is that I want people to think like, oh, what do you want to do tonight? You want to go karaoke, movie, or comedy show? It should be that kind of level where it's just like non-thinker. Oh, comedy show, sure, whatever. That's the goal, and I think it's going to happen. It's really in India and everything. It's exploding. People know comedy now, not as a comedy show. What do you mean? But like, yeah, okay, I went to a comedy show, so I won't tell you I went to the movies. So I won't tell you I went to the comedy show because it's normal part of life.
Mainstream kind of activity.
Yeah, exactly. It's basically part of life now, and I believe in the next 5-10 years it will be a part of life. Like, parents will take their kids to watch a movie. Parents will take their kids to watch, let's say, a Broadway show if they come in town. And parents will take their kids to a comedy club just to see what comedy is about. And that's what it is.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah.
And what about your personal goals in comedy? What are you hoping to achieve?
So for me, definitely traveling around the world, doing more comedy and expanding as I can. Now, my benefit is that I speak both English and Cantonese, and I perform in both English and Cantonese. So one of my goals is to perform around the world in 2 languages every time. And the goal is to do the same show in both languages and see how the language has to be adjusted to keep the same comedy, right? So the way you speak in Cantonese is different from English, but can I keep the same stories in 2 languages? And so far, I've done a lot of that already. I'm like, it is possible. Just maybe the way you structure the sentence, the wording you use, the tone you use is going to be different. I think that in itself is my challenge. And secondly, I really feel that comedy has always been an English thing mostly, or more like, let's say, Western, European, French, whatever, that kind of thing. And I always feel, why do the Asian comedians have to speak in English when we have our own language? So why can't we double it and do both languages, right? And that's my goal, is to push that idea of your own language plus English language, or the international language, and do 2 shows.
Are you doing that simultaneously, or is it one after the other?
One after another, so different audience.
Okay.
So like if I did the two language shows, you would do maybe back to back, 1 hour Cantonese, 1 hour English. So what I've done before in, let's say, Kuala Lumpur, I remember, is that I would stay there for 2 shows. They know 7 to 8 is English, 8:30 to 9:30 is Cantonese. You will have people who went to the English show and stay back for the Cantonese show. They know the content's the same, but they're like, I want to see him do this in Cantonese.
Yeah, maybe. Can you do that?
Yeah, right? It's quite fun. And they know where you're going, but like, oh, pretty interesting. I like what he did over there, you know. So these kinds of comparisons that you're like, oh, I see the twist. They're like, but I don't know how that's how he did it. Interesting. So I think that's the fun game as well.
Yeah. So it's kind of like linguistics
in a way,
exploration of comedy or something.
Using comedy to explore the way you can kind of translate. I mean, we've done translation with books and everything anyway, you know, as close as possible. But now it's not just by word for word literal translation. It's like, can you have the effect, the impact, right? So comedy is not just word for word. It's a lot more than that.
I think it's very difficult to translate word for word in general.
It won't work. It won't work.
It needs the context in the story.
Yes.
Have you ever had any troubles with that, where some jokes cannot be translated, or some experiences cannot be translated?
Sure, yeah. I mean, like I have this joke about how in Hong Kong, I'll do it in English for you to understand the context. Basically, I say that when I go outside and I speak in Cantonese, I usually scare people. Right? Right? So I remember one time I went to a cha chan tang, or basically a Chinese restaurant in Hong Kong, and very often in Hong Kong they make you sit with someone else. If it's busy, there's a couple in front of you. You don't care. I'm eating. You don't look at me. I don't look at you, right? We understand this game. So I'm sitting opposite this boyfriend, girlfriend, and I'm looking at the menu, and in Cantonese I say, hey, folk game, go say yeah, right? I call the waiter. And the girlfriend in Cantonese basically says, whoa, he speaks Cantonese, right? And the boyfriend says, shh, if he speaks it, he can understand it, right? So this joke kind of works in English, but it really like hits hard with Cantonese, because just the wording, it's like, just because Cantonese is so like that, he speaks, he understands. It's like, you're right. And that is so funny, because most people don't realize that if you speak a language, you must understand it first.
Yeah.
But you don't have to, if you understand the language, doesn't mean you can speak it.
True.
Right? So that twist, like, oh, you're right. You have to be able to understand to speak it, but you don't have to be able to speak it to understand it. Right? So that twist over there.
Yeah, that's an interesting story as well. And I think many people don't really connect these dots. Like, they would say for example, they would speak in Cantonese, thinking you don't understand. Even though you've just spoken.
Exactly, they don't realize, because their brain is still like, but he's a foreigner. It's like, yes, but did you not hear what he just said? Right? And that's the twist. So in Cantonese, that works. Let's say give it an A+. In English, I'll give it maybe a B.
Okay.
You get my point? Because in English, you don't have this scenario happening so often. You're like, why would you even say that's rude? Why would you say this in front of him, right? But in Cantonese, we're so used to like, you know, so they can imagine that actually happening.
Yeah, I think it's more of a local context, let's say, where Cantonese speaking people, they do that all the time.
Exactly,
No one understands.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So that's a good example of that joke works better in Cantonese, and hence, even if I translated it, doesn't have the same impact.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, so I think this is a Cantonese joke, it's not an English joke. Then I have to adjust accordingly. The lift button thing works in both languages. Yeah, but that's also an interesting way to approach comedy, to make it understandable for so many different groups of people and in so many different contexts. Yeah.
Okay, so this is the last question, but it's been great talking to you.
Thank you.
But what is the motto or quote you live by? Do you have something that maybe you want to share as well?
So I have a lot of quotes and mottos I live by. I'm a big quote guy, but one of them that really stood out for me for a comedy point of view is this comedian called Steve Martin. He, in his book Born Standing Up, once said, be so good they can't ignore you. So, and I was like, that is so true. Like, if you're so good, even if they don't like you, they're like, but he's so good, I gotta get this guy, you know. And that was my goal, because I always felt, I'm an Indian, I'm the minority, I'm like, why would they include me, right? So if I'm so good, it's not about race anymore. It's like I'm bringing you something only I can bring you. So whether you like Indians or not, you have to work with me if you want to get this level of stuff. And I think that in itself inspired me so much. I was like, yeah, if I'm really good, it's no longer about, whoa, he's Indian, but we don't care. So think about it. So this is one of the things I tell people now when I go to my talks. So I said, look at me now. I am 40-something years old. I'm balding. I have a bald spot here. I'm not exactly super handsome, right? I've got eye bags. I've got all this stuff. But people hire me to be an MC for an event. Now, the host of the event should be this, wow, look at me, I'm the host, right? Yeah, I'm the star. What a great looking host. Like, think about, imagine you see someone like me, like, hi everyone, welcome to, I'm at the entrance of a restaurant. You're like, I don't want to talk to this guy. But what I can do is that if I bring such a high level of performance on stage, where you're like, I love this energy. So when I'm the MC of an event, I'm not going up there going like, good evening everyone, I am Vivek Mahbubani. I'm like, no. I don't want you to be looking at me. I want you to be feeling it. So I'm like, hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, what's up? I'm doing that and going crazy on stage. And within a few minutes, they've forgotten the bald spot. They've forgotten the eye bags. They're like, this guy I love his energy. So that's what I mean. Be so good they can't ignore you, that even though I may not be the most handsome person, I'm not the tallest, I'm not the fittest, but they're going to hire me because I can bring that. I think that's the one thing I say.
You can bring the energy.
I can bring the quality, or bring that thing that only I can give you. I'm that good at that they can't be like, oh, but look at it. He looks this way. He has a bald spot. I mean, honestly, I tell people like, just imagine the idea that you would have someone like myself, just comedian, just telling jokes, but for me to be able to create an energy and a vibe and an atmosphere for the whole room to enjoy, that's not something anybody can do. I'm not trying to show off. What I'm saying is that I know I don't have the, wow, look at his face, wow. I don't have that. So I've got to replace it with something else. Whoa, look at the energy in the room. You get it? So I know I brought that. I'm so good at that they can't ignore me because I don't look that way.
Yeah, it kind of circles back to like the energy and authenticity.
Yes.
Before, right?
Know yourself, and then I'm okay with it. Like, I'm not like, oh, don't look at my head, please. I'm not gonna like, oh, wear a cap and hide. I'm like, I am balding, so what are you gonna do? That's my life. What do you want? I'm not gonna fake it. So I'm okay with it. I don't like it, but I'm okay with it. Yeah.
That's very inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So this is the end of the interview.
Wonderful.
It was really nice.
My pleasure. I enjoyed talking about this as well. Yeah.
And I think you shared many stories.
Yeah. Too many. Yeah.
It's good. It's good. Like, that makes it interesting, right? The sharing part.
Yeah.
As you said, people are storytellers.
Correct. Yeah.
Definitely, that's what.
There you go. That's what I do. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for your time. It was a lot of fun.